What's going on? 5 years ago, Mr. President, they're gonna put your face on our currency. Oh, they're gonna make a coin of me? That's pretty cool. If Abraham Lincoln does say so himself. I wonder if they're gonna make me look fat. With the death of Augustus St. Gaudens in 1907, Roosevelt's plans for him to redesign all American coinage, including the 1-cent piece, went down in history as the event that never was. In the fall of 1908, well-known sculptor Victor David Brenner was selected by President Theodore Roosevelt to put Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse of a medal that was to honor construction workers that were building the Panama Canal. President Roosevelt and Victor David Brenner met during the summer of 1908, and they began talking about coinage design. The president, of course, had researched Victor David Brenner before he sat down to model for him, and he liked a lot of his sculpture, especially the one Brenner did of Lincoln. Now, while the men were meeting and Roosevelt was modeling for Brenner, they had a major discussion about putting a U.S. president on a circulated American coin. Now, this is pretty important because this has never been done before up until this point in American history, because before it was always liberty that was on the obverse of an American coin. In the fall of 1908, Roosevelt had Mint Director Frank A. Leach contact Brenner for a commission to redesign the 1-cent piece, and he wanted to put the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the penny. Victor David Brenner was about as numismatic as they come for sculptors for American coins. He was born in Lithuania in June 12, 1871. At age 13, he was helping his father create seals and dies, where he picked up a huge interest for making medals and other things of that nature. In 1890, he immigrated to the United States of America, where he became a U.S. citizen. He also joined the American Numismatic and Archaeological Society in 1894. And in 1902, he joined the ANA. Of all the other sculptors that were involved in American coinage, he had to be the most intensely involved, loving numismatics and the collecting world. Even in 1910, he wrote the Mint Director, and he offered his services for a redesign of a Liberty head that could be used on all the American coins. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Lincoln on the cent obverse comes from a plaque that he did of Lincoln in bronze back in 1907. Now, the cent itself went through a series of design changes on the verse and reverse before it was pushed through to the mint. Chief engraver Charles Barber did not resist any of Brenner's changes, and he didn't resist any of the design changes before the actual production of the 1-cent piece was made, because of some of the issues he had with St. Gaudens when he was at the mint. Numicists like Henry Chapman and a few others publicly criticized Charles Barber for interfering with the efforts of St. Gaudens and also Pratt in developing the double eagle, the eagle, the half eagle, and the quarter eagle gold coins. So he didn't want to have any of these problems with Brenner. The final model was reduced in New York City by Henry Wheel. What's really interesting is that no sample pieces were made, not even sample pieces for the artist. So when they pressed it, they might have probably hit a few just to make sure it was going to turn out okay, and then they threw those back in to be melted, because not even the artist got any sample pieces. This is kind of crazy for the mint, because they always would give samples to see what it looked like. Now, the Lincoln cent began main production June 10th at the Philadelphia Mint. About 25 million pieces were made. In San Francisco, the mint made a lot less because the penny, or the 1-cent piece, the Indian head, wasn't very popular out in the West. On August 2nd, 1909, the new Lincoln cents were released to the public. People loved them. They just went absolutely nuts for the new Lincoln pennies. Banks ran out of them. There was a run on the Treasury in Washington, D.C. for the new Lincoln pennies. There were lines going around buildings just to get one Lincoln cent. This success story is not without its controversy. Now, of course, there's got to be a controversy in anything that's done, and this stems around Victor David Brenner's initials, which were located on the back of the coin, or the reverse of the coin in the lower portion, and they were VDB. Now, Secretary of Treasury Franklin McVeigh wanted the initials removed from the back and changed to just a B. He thought they were too large and they were too prominent on the reverse. Now, Brenner didn't have any problems with his initials being on the back. He was happy with it because every sculptor, mint artist that had been doing coins had put their initials on it and had no problems except for Brenner. And of course, Charles Barber was in the mix with this too, and he wanted them off the coin entirely. He didn't want anything on the coin. His first response was he thought it would delay production, which of course it would if having to put a B on and get rid of the DB initials. He was also afraid the B would be confused with his own initials, which were on several coins that were in circulation at the time. And of course, he didn't really like Brenner that much. It wasn't because he didn't get along with him. It was because of all the stuff that had happened with St. Gaubens before him and being an outside artist coming into the mint. Charles Barber got his way, and the initials were entirely removed from the Lincoln cent. From 1909 until 1918, there were no artist initials on the Lincoln cent. In 1918, the dies were pretty much worn for the Lincoln cent, and there was also a cent shortage. So new dies were created and new pennies were struck. Well, VDB were put on the obverse on the shoulder of Lincoln. Now, this came about primarily because a year before Charles Barber had died, so he wasn't able to protest the change, and George T. Morgan became the chief engraver. And George T. Morgan was a little less, let's say, high-strung than Charles Barber. Now, there are a lot of different types within the Lincoln pennies, and I'm going to classify these kind of in a way that makes sense to me, and it might make sense to you. Now, there are major types within the Lincoln cents, and there are subtypes and varieties within that type. Now, the first type is the wheat penny type, these with wheat stalks on the reverse. Now, the subtypes within that, because the wheat penny series went from 1909 to 1959, and the subtypes within that would be the VDB reverse on the 1909, made in Philadelphia and San Francisco. And then after that, there's a subtype 2, which is the initialist type from 1909 to 1918. And then there is the VDB obverse on his shoulder with his initials from 1918 until the present. Now, there are two other types too. There's the steel cent type, which would be classified in the wheat type because they only made them for 1 year, and that was 1943, and that was because of World War II. Copper was being rationed, so the mint used steel coated in zinc to produce cents for the nation. In 1959, they created another type of Lincoln cent, and it's the Lincoln Memorial Reverse Cent. They changed the reverse from the standard wheat penny reverse to the Memorial Reverse, which features the Lincoln Memorial that's in Washington, D.C. This was created by Frank Gasparo, the U.S. Mint. In 2009, the U.S. Mint created a new type of Lincoln cent. This is part of the Lincoln Bicentennial Cent program. It is to feature the life and times of Abraham Lincoln, and it's going to have 4 different reverses on the Lincoln cent. And then after all those are released in 2009, in 2010 they're creating another reverse for the Lincoln cent. So they'll create a new type in 2010. Let's talk about the obverse and the reverse of the Lincoln cent. The obverse, you're going to see the portrait of Lincoln. Now, the date is going to be on the right side, and just under the date is going to be the mint mark. If it's a Philadelphia coin, there will be absolutely no mint mark, but a Denver coin will have the D underneath, because on the pennies they still, even up until now, do not put the mint mark on the business strike coins. The motto, "In God We Trust," is also located on the right side, and the word liberty is located on the left side. The second reverse is the Memorial Reverse. It features 1 cent at the bottom. The United States of America is written across the top, and right smack dab in the middle of it is the Lincoln Memorial from Washington, D.C. And on sharply struck coins, you get really fine details in the steps and you can see Lincoln in the middle. And the motto E Pluribus Unum is located at the top of the monument. Now after this we have the 4 that are being struck in 2009, and we'll have the new one that comes out in 2010. Now let's move to the specs, because the specs of the Lincoln penny can just get really confusing, and I'm going to try and clear them up here for you. From 1909 until 1942, and then again from 1944 until 1962, the coin weighed 3.11 grams. It was 95% copper, 5% tin with a little bit of zinc added. In 1943, the coin weighed 2.7 grams, but that was primarily because it was still coated with zinc. And then in 1962 until 1982, the coin went back to the weight of 3.11 grams, but its composition changed to 95% copper, 5% zinc, with no tin in it at all. In 1982 until the present, it's changed once again. It's 99.2% zinc and it weighs 2.5 grams. The Lincoln cent has been made from 1909 up until the present, with business strikes being produced every single year. Now proofs are kind of sporadic. There were proofs made from 1909 until 1916, and then they stopped probably because of World War I, and they didn't start up making proofs again until 1936, and they stopped again in 1942. And that would also be because of World War II. And after that, they didn't start making proofs until 1950, and they've been making proofs ever since then. It has been produced in the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Now we're to the fun part, the rarities and the Lincoln cent. Now my personal favorite is the 1909S, the San Francisco Mint, VDB initialed reverse. The 1914 Denver cent is another rarity among the Lincoln cents. Now this coin itself had a very low mintage, but not that many people kept up with it. It had about a little bit over 1 million minted that year. In 1922, the Philadelphia and San Francisco Mint did not make any Lincoln cents. Only the Denver Mint did. Well, this set it up for an awesome rarity to be created, and this is the 1922 No Denver Mint mark. For some odd reason at the Mint in Denver, a lot of coins that were produced did not have a D underneath the date to show where it was made. Well, this created the 1922 No D. And there's also a 1922 weak D that's out there too. The 1955 double die is an extremely popular rare coin out there. I mean, everyone loves the 1955 double die. There's also the 1943 copper penny, which is kind of interesting because they were all made of steel that year. And then there's a 1944 steel cent, which they were all supposed to be made of copper that year. But you might want to be careful with those two because there are some plated ones out there. And with all these rare coins, make sure that you, when you purchase them, to make sure you get them from the top tier grading services like PCGS, NGC, ICG, and APMEX, which is ANACS. So, and also know who your seller is too, because you got to know who you're buying it from, because you don't want to get ripped off, especially on these high-end rare coins. Collecting Lincoln cents. There's so many out there, so many different varieties, so many different years. You can start your collection with hardly any money or with a lot of money. It's kind of up to you. As for myself, I would definitely go with a 1909 San Francisco because it's the first one and it's such a rare coin, but you're going to be paying a lot for it. The 1922 No D variety is a great one to have, along with the 1943 Denver and San Francisco. The 1919 San Francisco is a great one. I myself, I pick up rolls. You can get BU rolls of the 1982 large and small dates on those. I also picked up a 2008 BU roll from last year because, well, it's the last year of the Memorial Reverse, so you gotta have it. And of course, the 2009 rolls that are very popular, and they're a great way to start your collection with a brand new reverse on the coin. I'd like to thank APMEX, that's American Precious Metals Exchange, for sending all the coins you've seen on the show here over courtesy to be shown on Spare Change. Go over and check out their website. They've got all the coins you've seen here, plus a whole lot more. Not only Lincoln pennies, but anything you could possibly imagine over there. So definitely go check them out. I would also like to thank our other sponsor too, Numis-Network. That's Numis-Network.com. They have a lot of modern coins over on their website that you can take a look at too. Well guys, we've been rocking it out here with the Lincoln cent, our beloved USA penny. We've talked about the history, the controversy and all the mint bureaucracy that goes on before this coin came into creation. We've talked about the rarities, what's out there, and what to collect if you're a collector, whether you got a lot of money or not much money at all. You can do it with the Lincoln pennies. Well, keep checking your spare change because you never know what you might find. I'm Mark Epstein, and until the next episode of Spare Change, I will see you then.